In today's episode of Get Woke, Go Broke, the latest casualty in the culture war is a win for the right as Dustborn, apparently the wokest game ever produced, dies on the vine no matter how hard the woke media tries to convince the average gamer that diversity and inclusion matters more than entertaining gameplay. We'll get to that in 30 seconds, but let me introduce myself. I'm Mike S. Miller, 32-year veteran of the comic book industry, DC, Marvel, Game of Thrones, Hedge Knight artist, and creator of numerous intellectual properties including Lone Star, available now at lonestarcomic.com. Now I'm here to give my take on where my industry has gone, where the general media landscape has taken our culture over the span of my lifetime, and where I'd like to see it go in the future. I'm not here to hate everything or to assume the worst for clicks, but I am here to fight the culture war, as I have been doing since the AOL message boards were a thing back in 1996. I am that old. If you think the culture is worth saving and worth fighting for, please stick around and join the Blacklist Universe family. We're here to make a difference, and hope you are too. Now, back to the story. Dustborn is set in the near future, the year 2030, where America is divided, featuring a diverse and inclusive crew on a road trip across the country. The game combines elements of comic book style, action, adventure, and includes themes of resistance against an oppressive regime, focusing on characters with unique abilities known as animals. The game heavily incorporates themes of identity politics, including discussions on race, sexuality, and political revolution. The narrative is overtly political, with some describing it as a psyop due to its thematic content pushing for social change and, of course, portraying conservative figures as malevolent. How has the community reacted? For Dustborn, this backlash primarily stems from its narrative choices, which, as I just mentioned, are high on DEI and encouraging an almost Antifa-like disdain for the right. These themes are not just integrated into the game, but are the game's central focus, overshadowing traditional gameplay elements like mechanics, exploration, or combat. One of the core criticisms is that the game's emphasis on identity politics detracts from what real-world gamers consider the core of gaming. You know, the actual gameplay. Being engrossed in the world, the story, the characters. The way game companies used to make games before the woke mafia took over. The argument here isn't necessarily against representation or diverse narratives, but rather against what's perceived as an imbalance where narrative depth overshadows gameplay innovation or enjoyment. Dustborn is far more focused on making a political statement than providing a fun or engaging gaming experience. Ultimately, this makes Dustborn more of a political statement than a game. This suggests that the game's creators are more interested in pushing a Marxist worldview or political ideology rather than crafting what should have been a universally appealing game. Games should be an escape or a form of entertainment, not a platform for political or social commentary. At the very least, not to the extent where it dominates the game's very essence. This blatant ideological push has created a backlash with tangible effects, influencing game sales, reviews, and community discussions. While some might argue that any publicity is good publicity, more and more of these days we are discovering that idiom has its limits. In the case of Dustborn, the negative reception due to its woke elements has led not just to a polarized market, but a decimation of interest. Most players are avoiding the game entirely based on these criticisms, while others might buy it out of support for its themes. Those players are extremely limited in number, probably because they don't have jobs. The overall commercial failure cannot, or at least should not, be overlooked by the gaming companies writ large. Catering to leftist Marxist DEI ideology isn't ever going to be popular with the actual buyers of your products. Knock it off if you want to stay in business. Speaking of the actual game developers, this scenario also sparks discussions on game development, funding, and the role of developers in society. Devs should question whether games like Dustborn are sustainable in light of the success and failures of games like this and the commercial backlash of Yasuke, as compared to the overwhelming success of Wukong, which these same left-wing critics find problematic for not being diverse and inclusive. There simply is no trend where games might increasingly serve as vehicles for political or social messages at the expense of traditional gaming elements. Games must be games first and foremost. Some have questioned the reaction to Dustborn and whether or not it's being review bombed by culture war influencers or if the hate for it is genuine. And likewise, whether good reviews are political in nature. For example, IGN giving it a 7 might be seen by some as a reflection of the game's political narrative rather than its gameplay mechanics or overall entertainment value. This raises discussions about the integrity of game reviews, where there's an underlying suspicion that games with progressive or politically charged narratives might receive higher scores due to alignment with reviewers or outlets' political views. On the other side, there's been a noticeable trend where games that are woke or overly political get review bombed, where players give negative reviews not necessarily based on gameplay, but due to ideological disagreement. This phenomenon has been observed with Dustborn, where some negative reviews might be from players who refund the game shortly after purchase, suggesting they might not have engaged with the game extensively. This complicates the review landscape, making it harder to discern genuine player feedback from politically motivated responses. But realistically, you're going to have a small percentage of people who are politically motivated on either side of the spectrum. The vast majority of players are going to make their buying choices based on the media they trust or on the gameplay itself. Left-wing media outlets covering Dustborn often highlight its narrative and thematic elements over gameplay. This focus can skew perceptions where the game's attempt to tackle social issues might be praised for its boldness by like-minded influencers, overshadowing gameplay flaws or narrative inconsistencies. This selective focus shows that much of the media coverage is more about promoting a political message than providing a balanced critique of the game as a product. The mixed reviews and the debate over their validity has decimated Dustborn sales. While some might buy it out of curiosity or support for its themes, many have avoided it due to the controversy or political bias in reviews. This scenario reflects a sad trend where games are increasingly made as cultural statements, influencing not just sales, but also how games are marketed, reviewed, and discussed in the public sphere. Dustborn has indeed split the gaming community into distinct camps. On the left, there are gamers and critics who celebrate the game for its ambitious narrative that propagandizes themes of identity, politics, and social justice. This group appreciates representation and diverse characters and the narrative's attempt to engage in real-world issues, seeing it as a progressive step for video game storytelling. And I grant there are people that agree with that and care more about ideology than gameplay, but they are a minority. And if you're in a business that costs millions of dollars to produce a product, it's not a good idea to ignore the vast majority of your customer base to cater to a few loudmouth, blue-haired land whales. A game company should not be producing heavy-handed political messaging. It's a game company, left or right, frankly. Anything that takes the player out of the game is a detriment to the game. Any game prioritizing political narrative over traditional gaming elements like gameplay mechanics, exploration, or combat will fail on both the critical and financial stages. For most players, Dustborn feels more like a vehicle for preachy, pandering political commentary than an engaging game worth spending time and money on. Those drawn to its leftist narrative might purchase it out of support for its themes, but this will never translate into widespread commercial success if the game doesn't resonate beyond this specific ideological demographic. So what are the long-term implications? The impact of Dustborn might extend beyond its immediate commercial performance. It could influence game development, where developers will hopefully shy away from such overt political themes due to market backlash. Conversely, these ideologues might double down, creating a niche for politically charged games that end up costing them millions. So what's your opinion of Dustborn's failure to launch? Is it really all about the political divide? The forced diversity, inclusion, and social Marxism into entertainment spaces? Or has this all been much ado about nothing? Let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. And before you get too hot under the collar about this topic, remember, it's just a game.